I've been trying to open up with my stepdaughter, but she just told me the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. She said she will not accept me as a father until I win the Powerball jackpot lottery winnings. Guys, that's a 1 in 292 million chance of winning odds, so how in the heck am I ever gonna win that? Hannah is my twin flame. I'm sure many of you already are familiar with the term and would know how much it means to me. How much Hannah means to me? For nearly 4 decades, I felt as if my soul had been wandering, and it only settled when I met Hannah. Even with Sienna Harvey, my ex and with whom I've spent 10 years of my life with, I didn't feel the intense connection, longing, and recognition as I did with Hannah. We met through a mutual friend and just immediately recognized the intense bond between us, but we decided to take it slow, get to know each other better before starting our relationship. Both of us had been hurt by our prior experiences, making us weary and guarded about pursuing another. Within a couple of months, we realized that we were each other's soulmates, so the decision to get married came rather easily. I accepted Hannah with all she was, a single mother who'd worked a good part of her life as a high school teacher, just to ensure that her daughter had everything she ever required. Before tying the knot, Hannah had arranged my meeting with Lydia, her daughter. When I'd met the auburn-haired girl who takes after her mother, I'd been more nervous than my first meeting with Hannah. Lydia, now, she's a beautiful girl. An inch taller than her mother, with a sharp mind and a talent of creativity and music. But her scowl told me that she wasn't happy to see me, and it came as a shock for me. Lydia Porter is someone who doesn't waste time beating around the bush. She's brutally honest and will say whatever is on her mind, without any regard for the situation at hand. And that's exactly what she did at our first meeting. She made it very clear from her tone and her words that she did not mind me having anything to do with her mother's life as long as I made her happy, but she wasn't looking forward to any father-daughter bonding. I was nothing more than a stranger to her, and would remain so until she was 18 and will just move out. That was all she'd said to me and had left before I could so much as ask how she's been. Later, when Hannah had asked how it went, I lied to her. I couldn't lose Hannah, not for a teenage girl who clearly was going through puberty and had lived a turbulent life. When Hannah and I got married, Lydia's grimace was permanent. She made no effort to mingle with the guests nor meet my side of the family. For Lydia, I'd lied to them all. I told them that she was struggling with change in her life and would come around in no time at all. Hannah caught my lies and confronted me about them. I didn't lie to her then. I told her that I planned to make my bond stronger with Lydia, and at the same time, I could not keep her waiting because she's been lonely enough. We both have been. Hannah was grateful to me because her first husband had not just been a terrible life partner, but also an awful father. Lydia had grown up without her father's supervision, and she saw me as someone who'd caged her in, as someone who'd interfered in her life and tried to steer in the way I wanted. Of course, I meant none of that. I just wanted to let her know that I was there for her. Hannah moved into my house with Lydia. Our bedroom was downstairs, and we gave Lydia the room on the first floor, respecting her need for some privacy. In the start, Lydia was polite and refused to share much. Hannah kept an eye on her and her needs while I absorbed silently. Everything changed, though, when Hannah announced that she was with a child. I was ecstatic and worried for her health at the same time. While I tended to her needs, I felt that it was my responsibility to keep an eye on Lydia as well. She's at the age where many things can simply go wrong. Suddenly, Lydia's behavior changed with me. She became rude and began shouting at me. She stopped smiling and stopped coming to the dining table, and Hannah noticed the change in her and shared her concerns with me as well. I promised her that I'd talk to her, and I did. I'd hoped for a civilized conversation, but let me tell you, it escalated. For starters, Lydia told me that it wasn't my responsibility to look after her because I wasn't her father. I reminded her that she was under my guardianship and that everything she'd do would be reflected on Hannah and me. It turned out it'd been the wrong thing to say. She let her emotions absolutely fly, shouted at me, cursed in the most indecent words I've ever heard. As a result, I slapped her. And I still regret it. I regretted it instantly. That's when Lydia presented her bizarre demand. With her hand pressed against her red cheek, she told me in a cold, dead voice that I'd have to prove myself before she accepted me as her father and legal guardian. I'd been shocked at what I've done, so I agreed hastily. Lydia Porter's demand sits heavy upon my heart. She wants me to win a lottery ticket worth $1 billion in 2 months till her final exams. She didn't tell me why, and I tried asking Hannah about Lydia's interest in dreams like so many times before, making sure that I wasn't missing out on something. My wife played along, unaware of the problem I found myself in. If she suspected something, she kept it to herself. As she's told me before, Lydia ached for freedom and the means to achieve it. When Hannah talked about her daughter, she had this forlorn look on her face, which clearly said everything I needed to know. Hannah believes that she failed her daughter, and I aim to change that too. But I have no idea how to deal with my daughter's absurd request. How the heck can I win a lottery worth $1 billion? I will appreciate all the help I can get here, and any suggestions that might help me in these dire circumstances. Update number 1. I'm grateful for the mind-blowing response to my post. I had not expected to find that many people showing their concern towards me and my situation. I've noticed that many of you want more details about my daughter, her mindset, her overall behavior. I wish I could just list down all of Lydia's qualities. The good, the bad, but I can't. She's an introvert, hasn't given me enough opportunities to interact. I believe that her father's the reason behind such behavior. He never bothered to get to know his daughter, and had always kept her at an arm's length. He had not been there when she needed him, and now she's built all these walls of defense around herself. I know gaining her trust will be quite challenging, and I might end up hurting all of us, but I've got to try. She got her whole life ahead of herself, and I can't lead her and just watch step into the world like this. As I'm a brand manager at a local chain store, I don't earn much. At least not enough to buy everything Lydia truly desires. Still, when I got my salary today, I offered to treat Hannah and Lydia, to lunch on the weekend. My daughter, as expected, turned us down. Hannah looked worried, but I told her that I'd talk to Lydia and try to convince her once more. Since after our last conversation, which had ended with Lydia's crazy absurd demand, I found myself outside her bedroom door once more. When I'd reached to knock, voices from the other side of the door stopped me. Either Lydia had someone in her room or she was talking to someone on speaker. I resisted the urge to burst in and demand an explanation. Instead, I did something I'm still ashamed of. I eavesdropped. I listened to every word. Lydia was talking to her friend, someone who goes by the name of Sarah. At first, I heard Sarah trying to, cool Lydia down. She kept telling my daughter to open up to me, and maybe she'd get some version of the father that she'd always hoped for. Lydia had shot down her suggestion so fast by telling her that she didn't know anything. It wasn't my daughter's words, but the poison in her tone which broke my heart. But I stood my ground. Then I heard a male voice, someone older. The way he talked worried me, especially when he told my daughter to find some means to just chill. In response, my daughter told me that she'd been meeting them at their spot in the evening when Adkins will be at work. I'd known that Lydia did not expect me as her father, but hearing her call me by my surname is such a manner like a stab to the heart. I swallowed my pride before making my way back quietly. The next step that I had to take did not, make me any more proud. I decided to follow my daughter instead of going to work. A part of me wanted to fill Hannah in about what I heard and about what I was going to do. But she'd seemed pale and exhausted when she returned from work, so it was up to me to only find out where my daughter spent her time and with whom. I'm sure that many of you will criticize my decision to follow my daughter without her knowledge. I know that this was a very wrong thing for me to do, but I've never been a father before, and suddenly I have a teenage daughter. I'm just driven by the desire to shield her from this nasty world and selfish people. And with what I've discovered, I believe I was right to follow her. My daughter met with two of her friends, the girl and the guy from the call. After she'd been finished talking, I kept a lookout to see if she'd invited them to her room, without her parents' knowledge. She did not, and I was relieved. Later, I followed her to the cafe just 2 blocks away. It did not take much effort to follow her inside and just slide into the booth next to her. She didn't suspect me, nor did her friends notice me there. I like her friend Sarah. When Lydia began complaining about me, Sarah reminded her a few times that she needed to give me a chance. She told my daughter to be grateful and finally having a father who showed some interest in her life. Lydia snapped at her, telling her that it was too late for that. She was old enough, and within 2.5 years she'd be leaving us for good. I was hurt to learn that she wasn't exactly happy about having a younger sibling. She complained about the possibility of watching over the baby, when Hannah and I would be at work. I made a mental note to never ask Lydia to babysit. On the other hand, I took an instant dislike towards Toby. He kept quiet when Lydia was complaining about me, and he had this glazed look on his face that raised my suspicion about him. He offered Lydia to come and crash at his place. It took every ounce of strength in me to keep myself seated across. If not for Sarah's laughter and Lydia's snort, I would have punched this boy right in the face. And his encouraging Lydia of her rude behavior made me even more angry. Sarah was the one to point out that his mother's presence with his stepfather had nothing to do with Lydia. That's when I gathered that the 3 of them have known each other for quite some time. So, this is where things stand now. I have not confronted Lydia about her meeting with her friends or even the phone call. I can't give her a reason to suspect that I'm onto her. If I want to make our relationship work, I have to show her that I trust her. I do, to some extent, but her company is questionable. I've shown an interest in visiting her school and meeting her teachers. Hannah was relieved to hear that because it's been a while since she's visited, and even that was when school had called to discuss Lydia's progress in the class. Lydia doesn't know about this, and I want to keep her in the dark for a while. Hannah has agreed with me, and it'd be better off if our daughter doesn't find out. I'm sure that I'll learn a lot about my daughter and might get a hint about her peculiar demand. Update number 2. Hannah and Lydia had a huge fight last night, and I had to take my wife to emergency because of her high blood pressure. I was furious at my daughter for raising her voice against Hannah and jeopardizing her life. The doctor advised me to leave Hannah admitted to the hospital overnight. She insisted that I go back home because Lydia was alone. She was the last person I wanted to see that night, but I could not leave an underage girl at home alone. When I came back, I found the house dark. For a moment, I felt as if the ground had slipped beneath my feet. It was 1 in the morning, and I suspected that Lydia was not home. Terror replaced anger, and I rushed inside, calling her name like a madman. I heard no response, and I rushed upstairs, turning on the lights as I went. I could only let myself breathe when I found Lydia curled up on her chair, staring out the window. I'd wanted to shake her and demand answers, but I didn't. Instead of saying anything, I took a seat on the edge of her bed and observed her silently. There were nail prints on her biceps, as if she'd keep digging her nails into her skin. Her arms were tightly wrapped around her knees, enough to hurt her. Neither of us moved for half an hour, nor did we exchange a single breath. I saw this as progress until she opened her mouth. Lydia wanted to know if I'd purchased enough lottery tickets. I was perplexed by her question, and despite my anger, chose my reply pretty carefully. Instead of the answer she wanted to hear, I asked if she wanted to know her mother's condition. She gave a dry, humorless laugh before telling me that I should get out of her room. This dismissal was rude, but I could tell from her tone that she was also hurting. I spent last night tossing and turning around in my bed. Couldn't sleep because my mind was stuck on Hannah's condition and Lydia's mental instability, or the hint of it. This morning, I brought Hannah back home, and we had a conversation with Lydia, and, when she went to school. I told her about me following her, about Sarah and Toby, as well as her odd body language the night before. Hannah did not say a word. She just kept shaking her head and fighting off the tears that slid down her cheeks. Then she told me how she'd failed her daughter, basically. Her ex-husband had never shown any interest in Lydia from the day she was born. She'd always been a burden for him, and he'd never spent a penny on her. To provide for her daughter, Hannah had taken more workload, which resulted in her having no time for her daughter. I'd known that Hannah had not given Lydia much attention, but I hadn't known the extent of it. From Hannah's words directly, I've come to the conclusion that Lydia's demands come from desired berries in her heart for years. Her own father never spent on her nothing, and she never asked Hannah for money or things because she'd known that her mother was already working day and night, just to provide for her and keep the house up. I'm her guardian, her stepfather, and she demanded the money from me just to test how far I'd go for her. Now I understand, her wish isn't outlandish, but a test for me, which I'm destined to lose because the odds of claiming the jackpot in the Powerball drawing are 1 in 292 million. So, what should I do? How can I make my daughter accept me as her father, because God knows I love her as one. Despite everything she's done, she is Hannah's daughter. She's my daughter. Update number 3. Hey everyone. Quite a lot's happened since the last update, and I couldn't reply to most of your comments. After the last update, I decided to buy a couple of these lottery tickets, just to show Lydia that I've taken up her challenge, that I take her seriously. I went as too far as to leave one of them lying on the shoe rack. Oh, so cleverly. When she was leaving for school, I pretended not to notice her stopping for a few seconds. That day, she had lunch with me and Hannah on the table. She didn't share a word, as she never does, but she was there beside us. I could see how happy Hannah was to have her there. It all changed, though, when my wife brought up the names of her friends in her regular meetings with them outside the school during school hours. Lydia accused us of spying on her. It was only later that Hannah realized what she'd done. To erase her motherly concerns, she'd asked the wrong questions and given away the fact that we were keeping tabs on her. Some other items I would have been angry about, I couldn't blame my wife for, her concerns and mood swings. She's already too sensitive, and I try my best to walk on eggshells around her. My decision to come clean in front of Lydia proved to be the dumbest idea I've ever had. It erased the tiniest progress we've made over the past few days, and Lydia accused me of being paranoid and a control freak. I tried to apologize, but she did not listen. She told me once again to get out of her room. The next morning, Lydia left for school without breakfast. Hannah's blood pressure started to skyrocket once more, and I had to ask her to take the emergency. I tried telling Lydia by phone, but it was turned off. I'd called her school next, and they asked me to visit as there were a few things they wanted to talk about. Visiting Lydia's school disclosed even more hidden sides of my daughter. Her principal complained about her failing grades and a number of absences. She had gone to school only for 10 days in the previous month, and 17th in the month before. The school also mentioned how they kept calling us but had no response. I was surprised to find that she's given the school the wrong contact number, with a ton of other lies. Assured the administration that her parents were busybodies, so it was hard for them to ever visit. I'd kept the information I learned to myself. I knew that I had to be the one to find where my daughter went after ditching school. I managed to contact Sarah, who seemed to be the one who knew everything about Lydia, and the only one. Lydia had struggled through her student life, at the hands of bullies and decreasing lack of confidence. Often she'd gone to school parties with old clothes, and the students had made fun of the cheap phone bags and shoes she had. Sarah had tried to help, but Lydia turned her down, and with time she became quiet and started to hide within herself. It was only this year that she'd open up a bit, and the reason had been Toby. He was older than the girls and was enrolled in a community college. His lifestyle and struggles had taken Lydia's mind off her own. Based on the information I got from Sarah, I'd gone for Toby's place, and at that right time. There had been a huge fight taking place outside the older boy's house, and one of the boys was holding Lydia hostage. Till the day I die, I'd never forget the terror on my daughter's face. I jumped in to save her without a second thought, and spotting an elder amongst themselves, the boys had dispersed. There were countless thoughts just rushing through my mind, and I only dared to stop when I'd go through every single corner of Toby's apartment. To my surprise, it was sparse and he wasn't hiding anything illegal. When I turned to face my daughter, she'd been fuming. Her face was red with barely constrained anger. Instead of talking to her, I asked Toby if I could stay. The boy had appeared terrified but nodded. Once we were seated on his floor mattress, I asked Toby to come clean about everything, if he was my daughter's sincere friend. While Lydia had kept quiet, Toby told me everything. He was an orphan, and the amount of loans his father had taken from loan sharks before fleeing the country was too much, and multiplied by interest every month. He also assured me that the two had met by pure chance, and were nothing more than friends. Lydia considered him as an older brother that she never had, a trustworthy figure in her life to replace her dad. That's when I realized that Lydia's demands might have been for her friend. It appeared to me that she was trying to help Toby because her own harsh circumstances had made her empathetic towards her friend. Before leaving, I'd promised Toby that I'd see what I could do for him. He'd been grateful, and I'd been apologetic just for misjudging him. On our ride back home, Lydia had become furious. She had not uttered a single word throughout the ride, and neither did I. When I parked in the car in the garage, I kept the doors locked. That's when Lydia barked at me to let her go. I'd felt exhausted then, not physically but mentally drained. Hannah's health and Lydia's behavior were taking a huge toll on me, but I loved the two enough to keep going. Before I could release Lydia from the confinement of the car, I handed her over 2 tickets. 2 tickets that I purchased from the major lottery games in the States. That's when I'd promised her that I'd buy more if it increased my chances of winning. I just wanted her to see that I was being serious, and sincerely cared about her well-being. Without even a word, Lydia got off without taking the tickets from my hands. Update number 4. Thank you. I have no words to show my gratitude for all the time you've taken out of your busy lives to read my story and comment and just provide your piece of wisdom, and I sincerely apologize for disappearing for a couple of weeks. I'm picking up on my last post and telling you the details about the progress that I've personally made. The past 2 weeks were quite hectic because the brand that I managed was aiming for a new summer theme. Now, rest assured, I kept checking your comments, and it was a comment among many that I did end up considering. With me gone at work most of the time, I'd requested Lydia to watch over Hannah in my direct absence. I've told her that she was the only person I could trust for the job, and my daughter had a surprised look amongst her face. Wow. It felt good, seeing her look at me with anything but hatred and distrust. Hannah had been too happy, having Lydia dawd on her for a fortnight. The two got to spend some quality time together, and the change in Lydia was absolutely visible. My hopes were crushed just last night when I tried to reward Lydia for her efforts with a necklace. She rejected it. Rejected it with a straight face and told me that she's done all of it for Hannah, not because I asked, and also she reminded her that the request still stood. It seemed that for every step that I took for my daughter, I had to take 2 steps back. Many of you have appreciated my concern about my daughter and the lengths I'm willing to go just for her, but I feel as if it's simply not enough. My first priority is to win her trust no matter what, and then for her to acknowledge me as her father once and for all. Upon the suggestions of many on here, I've made a list of days of importance to my daughter. I plan on throwing her surprises, decent ones of course. I'm eager to see where this would leave us. Update number 5. Hey, as I mentioned previously, I went far and beyond to make my daughter's special day extra special. I'd started to take her to dinner and to her room during her exam week and clean it up for her as well as while she studied. I'd been hopeful till yesterday that Lydia would cancel her demand of me winning a lottery and just acknowledge me as her parent finally. It all came crashing down, though, when she reminded me of it before leaving for school. I'd been too surprised to react, and Hannah asked what it was about. Well, having no choice, I simply had to tell her. Hannah is mad at me for keeping it from her, and she's absolutely furious at Lydia for saying something so ludicrous. This led to the mother and daughter having an argument that you would not believe. I tried to soothe things over, telling them that it did not matter to me, and that I just started to enjoy the feeling of purchasing a ticket and anxiously awaiting to see if I'd win. Hannah reminded me how childish it was of me to pin my hopes on a cheap ticket. Her words had hurt. I'd admit because she'd been right. I tell her later that I was doing it all to gain my daughter's trust. Still, she refused to talk to me. Again, I found myself at a crossroads. I didn't know how to proceed further, for everything I tried fired back. I wondered, as some of you suggested, what would happen if I stopped trying to gain Lydia's trust. 2.5 years are left, and then she'd be gone. She'd be 18 years old and able to leave the house, but I'm a father. I can't cut ties with my own daughter. Lottery results were announced earlier today. I was surprised to find Lydia in the lounge with her laptop open to the Powerball site without saying a word. I've taken my seat beside her and kept wondering how our lives would change within moments. The chances of me winning were absolutely low, though, almost non-existent, but for my daughter's sake, I wish I'd win. I was dreading to think what she'd do if I lost. Asked her this much. Lydia's tone while talking to me for the first time was different. Softer, more passionate. She told me that all her dreams and hopes were pinned on the lottery money because there was so much she wanted to have and so much that she wanted to do. Hannah came up beside us then and reminded her that she could do everything step by step, that it had nothing to do with me winning the lottery. Even though I lost the lottery, I feel as if I've gained much more than money could ever provide me. I've gained an ounce of my daughter's trust. That's what I perceived from her soft smile and joyful tone when she asked if I was up to her for a second challenge. Now I'm sure it's as Hannah had said when I'd mentioned Lydia's demand. Lydia's father had disappointed her so much that she was hesitant in putting her trust in me. Still has yet to call me Dad, or even acknowledging me as one, but I take standing up to her challenges as a step closer to her. And let me assure you that it would not have been possible without any of you. You've always supported me through my struggles, and I'm sure you'd keep doing so. For now, I'll end my story. Signing off. Well, at least there was a bit of progress towards the ends of this story, and OP, I guess, is getting a little closer with his stepdaughter. I would like to hear from you guys. Maybe you've actually been in the same scenario. Maybe you've had a stepdaughter, stepson, stepbrother, any sort of sibling or kid, and you have a little bit of experience you would like to share. Drop it in the comment section down below. Guys, that's all the stories for today. I hope you enjoyed the saga. If you did, smash that subscribe button, click the like button, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic day. Peace.